look, apologies to Tasmanians, but for most Australians, what you get up to down there politically barely matters. That said, I look at the mess the Liberal government is in. It seems about to be forced to the polls after getting up to its neck in debt. And I'm thinking, what an example of why this country is in decline. Why we're all getting poorer. And just look how poor. I mean, today's Australian growth figures, what a disaster. The overall growth figures are terrible enough. I mean, just 0.2% growth for the March quarter. That's half of what was expected. But the real figure that should count is even worse. Growth per person. That's once you share this tiny little growth we've seen nationally with all the extra people, the immigrants pouring in, taking their share, well then growth per person actually fell by 0.2%. In fact, per capita growth has now gone backwards for 8 of the past 9 quarters. Australia really is in decline, a decline that's hidden only by the mass immigration propping up the overall figures. But there was Treasurer Jim Chalmers today, once more blaming the world, anyone but himself, and telling us if we can still see him, don't worry, we can then know that things will be fine.
I firmly believe that there are good reasons to be optimistic about our economy. If I believed that Australia had peaked or this was the best that we could hope for, I wouldn't be here.
Now, I won't discuss all the reasons why Australia's in this per capita recession, you know, how productivity is shockingly low, business being tied up with pro-union laws, green tape, red tape, black tape, smashed with high power prices caused by this mad crusade for net zero emissions. Let me instead get back to Tasmania. As an example of Australia's rot, it's cultural rot too, Premier Jeremy Rockliff, he could become the first Australian Premier to lose his job because we're just too crazy about sport. Too crazy about sport and not crazy enough about finding the money to pay for our pleasures. In Tasmania, the Labor opposition has now seen itself get its nose in front in the polls, and it also sees that one of the government's big projects, the planned new stadium in Hobart, built as a condition demanded by the AFL for getting an AFL team, the Tasmanian Devils, that stadium has again blown its budget and isn't all that popular.
Tasmanians have had a bloody gutful over your stadium, and you can stick it up your bum.
Must Jackie Lambie always carry on like that? Is that a Tasmanian thing? Anyway, the cost blowout. This stadium was supposed to cost $715 million, which is already crazy enough for a very small state, which it's already got stadia. The latest figure though, this new one will cost another $200 million more than was first promised. It's like the Victorian disease as well, you know, whatever the government builds, be certain it's going to cost much more than they promised. But then, you know, this is Australia where sport is God, and Labor doesn't want to say it's actually against this stadium, no matter what it costs. It's just saying, no, we're not against the stadium. We're just looking at debt generally under this Liberal government. So Labor now says we're putting up a no confidence motion against the Premier, which will be held tonight. The vote will be held tonight. And if it's passed, it means the Premier should quit.
And if you can't be trusted with the finances, then you cannot lead this state. When this Premier got into the job, there was barely $1 billion worth of net debt. And 3 years later, we're on a pathway towards $11 billion worth of net debt. It is staggering, extraordinary, reckless, irresponsible. And how could anyone support that?
Now, Rockliff says no, if he loses this vote, he's not going to step aside for a new Premier. He's going to call a new election.
This day, it might not end well for me, but this day will define you. That's right. This day will define you for the rest of your political career, where you are now will have the stigma as leader of being a wrecker. But
really, Labor does have a point. And the Liberals all over Australia should be frightened that they are losing their reputation for being good with money. I mean, the Canberra Liberals as well. It's not just that AFL stadium that's costing a fortune more than was promised. The most embarrassing example, and I am talking about world-class embarrassment, is the government's plan to replace Tasmania's ferries to Melbourne, which are key, obviously, to bringing over tourists. The new and bigger ferries as ordered were meant to cost $714 million and be delivered 4 years ago. But first the German builders went bust, and then the Finnish builders had all this trouble. Then there was a 9-month delay while the government thought, oh, what do we do next? And then, oh, more complicated. Well, all in all, it sounded, in fact, exactly like the stuffing around with the new submarines under the federal Liberals, doesn't it? Oh, we'll get the submarines from Japan. No, France. No, from America. And with these ferries, with all that, the cost just went boom from $714 million, 714, to nearly $1 billion. And that isn't even the worst of it. The government just realised, oh, there are no berths in Devonport for these bigger ferries. Oh, we'll have to build those first. And they went through the whole same thing again. These new berths were meant to cost $90 million and be ready this year. Latest estimate, the cost is now nearly $500 million, and the berths won't be ready until next year. It's all so stupid that Liberal Senator Jonathan Dunham was today having to plead with the AFL to show the Tasmanian government some mercy and maybe drop some of its expensive demands for that new stadium.
Of course, seeing increased costs concerns everyone, me included, especially when you do have existing infrastructure like Ninja Stadium in Bellerive and York Park in Launceston, as some have said, but the AFL have set their deal there. Maybe they could come to the table and give Tasmanians a break and perhaps reduce the burden on the taxpayers here and let us play at these stadiums that we currently have, rather than demanding the expenditure they want for a new stadium.
No, begging a sporting code to ask a little less. I mean, is that? But like I said, this is Australia. This is sport. You know, how could we say no to the kiddies and tell them, oh no, we can't afford to build $1 billion new stadium for you? I mean, just look at the tears of the marketing manager of the new Tasmanian Devils AFL team. That is, if this team actually goes ahead with the new stadium, perhaps in some doubt.
This club is powered by our future generations, by our kids and by our grandkids. It's an opportunity to bring this state together. It's an opportunity to create pathways.
What a farce. I mean, if ever you've wondered why China seems to be steaming ahead, well, we're just bumping along at the bottom. I mean, look at Tasmania and weep for this country.